Without further ado, then, I'd like to start our first panel discussion for the day and invite our panelists to come up here, if you would, please. We have Ali Amiri, who's Executive Vice President, Carrier and Wholesale at Etisalat. We have Maan Amine, as CEO, WIS Telecom, and CEO of MENA Submarine Cable Systems. Mohamed Abdelbassit, General Manager of MENA for BIC. And we have Manesh Jaishankar, Vice President, Data Mean and Broadcast for DO. Well, welcome, everyone, and thank you for being on the panel here. I think we're short one of these microphones, so I'm going to stand at the podium right now and go from there. Our theme for today's panel is Intercarrier Networks, Challenges and Opportunities. Service providers increasingly rely on third-party access vendors to fill gaps to increase their footprint. And the hope is that the panel can inform the audience on some of their experiences, expectations, and actions to make the process easier. And I'll just start with the questions, and we'll kind of go down the line of panelists here, if we would, please. Amr, one of the things that is a hot topic today in the carrier market is what is needed to support critical intercarrier requirements?
The way we see it is we need more transparent interconnection commercial model. We need more a carrier or a physical platform agnostic model. Networks has to be, instead of being a technology agnostic, it has to be also a carrier agnostic. We keep investing a lot of time discussing with each other how much cross-connection charges, how can we protect our infrastructures, and so on and so forth, while the OTT service provider is just using and enjoying our infrastructure. So we need to look at models that would enhance the way we leverage our infrastructure, and at the same time have a specific model that would actually address the usage of our network without having any revenue in it from the OTT providers and the CDNs and so on.
Good point, good point. Maan?
Okay, well, first of all, I think we need to put the question of the intercarrier circuits into its context. I think it's mainly driven by the fact that there is a huge demand. I think I lost my, okay. There is a huge demand on the capacity side due to different applications and different applications. So, which automatically oblige the providers to switch to another technology, which is the carrier internet, instead of the MPLS or the IP transit. And this shift in technology, in fact, will automatically, like in any other model, introduce interoperability issues and problems. And here, I think on the short term, we'll have certain defensive reactions from different suppliers in order to protect their own proprietary solutions and interfaces. But on the mid to long term, I think standardization will take place at a certain point of time. So I think we'll be living in the future because most of the traffic will be moving on carrier Ethernet from the MPLS. And some projections speak about 75% by 2013 of the total traffic moving to carrier Ethernet. We'll be facing difficult times, especially for small players. And there are different approaches how to address this, but I think we'll leave this to the later part in the...
Good. I understand. Ali Amiri.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to you all. In fact, like any other businesses, I think carrier's business also has evolved over the last 10 years, 12 years. And the number of carriers worldwide have increased. You've got few big carriers which actually have either better equipped or their connectivities are more distributed through various networks, being it MPLS or Ethernet or whatever. But then we have really been facing this issue of interconnectivity.
Right.
And I think this is the first time, this is good, thanks to this question, because this is something that we are really facing, and all of us are facing, whether we are talking to Europe, or to Asia, or to even any of the regional or the Arab worlds. Every connectivity, you could put a minimum time of 3 weeks or 1 week or 10 week or you just put whatever to maximum 3 months maybe.
Right.
This is in terms of business. Now you are really, your sales guys are working in the field and you are adding maybe whatever, but in reality, that's not achieved the time that you have done the business. So that is really creating a lot of, I would say, if it is customer experience on the carrier side, which is quite important, from one side that both the parties are supposed to have added something in terms of value, better communication, and increased level of this to their customers, which could not be felt within 2-3 months. And maybe it got forgotten sometimes also. This, leave alone that when you have services that you go through maintenance, when you have problems as well, same way. I think through this talk, maybe there are other talks that I was saying in regard to something, how do we go through some standardization? There's a need to do something about it, since if, of course, you have all the carriers around, to do something in terms of workshop in order to move in a better way. We have been so far focusing on selling and just on the revenue side, but how to do that part, we have not done much.
Good, good. Manesh, what do you think on that?
Yes, actually, my colleagues, they didn't leave me anything to say more, but I believe Mr. Amiri is correct about that, because after moving from SDH to the new foundation, which is the Ethernet these days, so I think carriers, they need really to know what is the service that needs to be delivered in details, because this will help a bit that we can reach some standardization about the service delivery, which is important today. And I believe the MEF, the Metro Ethernet Forum, is helping today this to standardize even the NNIs, the order forms, even in order to be able, so in order to leave the carriers with some foundation so they can communicate to each other. Now we are depending, I believe, we move from one leg to the other, and here we need to make sure that our customers, here will be the operators who are delivering this to their customers, we will be able to see what's happening end to end. And today we don't have that as such. It should move, of course, by time, but this will not happen unless we have this some sort of standardization.
Good, good. Well, I think from Amir here at GBI all the way down to you, we heard the same thing. We need some sort of standardization
Yes.
out there in order to make this work a lot better for the carrier marketplace out there. On to the next question here. How do you think the operator can accelerate delivery and reduce OpEx and boost services, quality, and agility for their particular customers when they come out here? Amir, you want to start there?
I believe that's a very big question.
It is a long question.
I forgot the beginning of it by the time we reached the end. The challenge we have is the wholesale market is still operating, and my experience is not even compared to Mr. Ali Amiri's experience, but he's seen it for so many years. The challenge is really big. The wholesale market model is changing by the day. The industry that people assumed it needs a very big ticket to get into this industry by building a cable or building a network is becoming smaller and smaller. By the time you finish a network, the proposition of this network on the ROI is slashed by 50 or 80%, and now you still need to figure out how are you going to return those. If you look at the telecom industry in general, I believe it's like the shipping industry. It's like the fluids that it follows the fluid dynamics. So if you have an obstacle somewhere, you will find the traffic moving all around it, but it's not going through it. If you look at airlines business, look at Emirates Airlines, look at the other airliners. When you manage to find an end-to-end solution with a good customer experience, then you can have something that works. We need to abandon the perception of being a wholesaler that we sell the tens of gigs into having different products. We have a product for the enterprise customers with a different pricing, with a specific business model, with a specific cross-connection charges with the operators. We need to have another business model for the transit business, the business that does not touch the country but transits the country. It has to be different just to encourage more customers coming from Asia, for example, to bridge to Europe through the Middle East. If we have those different segmented models, then our challenge is simpler, because we can at least see on each layer that we've created how much ROI is happening. Now what we see is a challenge. How can we know how much is the cross connection from a network to network. If you ask, do you have one that is specific to Ethernet, but is not specific to MPLS, and it's specific to SDH, but not specific to IP? No, no. So if we segment it, then at least we can get a better mathematical model.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Maan, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I mean, out of the context of the Ethernet carrier that is related to the intercarrier circuits, and here I join my colleague in the, I would say, non-technical barriers that are today surrounding our businesses. For instance, from one side we have, for the capacity wholesale market, a huge price erosion in different markets, especially in this part of the world that was started a few years ago and still ongoing. On the other side, the other burden would be to, in fact, we are dealing with markets where regulation have a very, very small role in our businesses. And this morning I heard Mr. Jafar talking about or asking for more regulation in the telecom market. I think it would be a great idea if, I mean, UAE has always been a pioneer in this region for giving the example of progress in the different sectors. If we can start, for instance, by an open access model for submarine cables in this region, this would, for instance, improve a lot the business model, at least make it more clear and more transparent.
And I'm sorry, you said an open access model?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Where, in fact, the interconnection costs, like Amr was saying, would be defined by a cost base and similar to everybody everywhere. In fact, it's the model that is applied in Europe now, and that is, you don't need to negotiate on each and every deal the interconnection cost, so you know what is your basic cost, and then you can sell easily. And this will facilitate the intercarrier relations and provisioning and time to market, because you don't negotiate on a case-by-case basis or on a deal-by-deal basis, but you have your cost that is already built in and known. Now, to go back to the context of the Ethernet carrier, I think there is no solution. There is more an approach, and that is called in the literature orchestration.
Right.
And the orchestration, in fact, it's a funny word because it comes from the word of music. When you lead an orchestra, you need to run different instruments with different players to give one melody at the end. It's in the application on the carrier to carrier, it's even more complicated because in each entity you need to play different instruments, different players, but in different places and with different, let's say, groups of players, because between different carriers you are not playing the same song. So the orchestration is more of an approach where it's an optimization effort to reduce the burden and the cost leakage more than a solution that would solve the whole end-to-end customer experience and make it really smooth. And at the end, I think it's about processes and people more than about technology.
Sure. Good.
Do you mind if you repeat the question, because every answer was this? So can you repeat the question, please?
No, I'll be glad to. How can the operator accelerate delivery, reduce OpEx, and boost service quality and agility in delivering their services today?
Okay. I think this is almost related to the first question.
Very close, yes.
But one thing is that, even from the two answers that I heard, that what's happening in our market, in fact, is that efficiency being from the carrier side and from the customer side. Now, everywhere is carrier. We are talking carrier to carrier, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, carrier's expectation that you are either it is a large wholesale or smaller circuits here and there, scattered, right? So if it is point-to-point circuits where it could be a small circuit, but because of the, as was said in the earlier question, because of this, the same rule applies, whether it was very small or big capacities, whatever. At the end of the day, we do not have what was put on the slide right before, automation of cable connectivity and capacity connectivity. So it goes through the same thing. And mainly the focus is that the deal is done or not done. Right. Okay? So that really is creating, and maybe, again, corrosion of the prices has a lot of impact, that to what extent you even, or other carriers, or smaller carriers especially, spend on more and more automation, bringing up their network to deliver of some other networks in order that to happen. So we have, through experience, we have realized that we go through different steps, which makes it much more difficult, and then is often escalated or whatever. It happens to be a complexity much more one side than the other side. Right. But again, at the end of the day, it's point to point. You have to bring up the circuit. So I think from one end, we talk how to be efficient internally, me as Etisalat, how in terms of my automation, in terms of my billing, all issues which are related to customer experience. Internally in Etisalat, we are really looking at that seriously now. And part of it is that automation, whether the automation of cable connectivity, making more of such meetings, understanding that. I give you an example. Okay. I personally was watching a case where connectivity which did not happen between operator X and operator Y. And it was escalated. Their CTO, their CEO, and then escalated to me. And then I had to really take it serious because now is the problem. I have to solve it. So I just listened to the two technical sides. One is Indian English speaking, one is Arabic English speaking. Right. Now they're talking about different points, and they're just naming the name of the areas. The name of the area, for example, in UAE is very difficult to name an area someone in Jordan. And vice versa, you know. But they do not have even that understanding to actually categorize what numbers as part of that standardization. So lengthy discussion for the sake of making one understand what I am talking and what you are talking. So this could be a big circuit or a small circuit or whatever. So this automation issue, something that really is part of our agenda, and we are talking about 2015 in all aspects to extent possible, and we need the big help of other carriers as well in order to standardize and come to that. All that makes it a whole journey of being efficient, less customer problems, and better customer experience.
Good, good. Manesh.
No,
I didn't get your answer on
Mohamed.
that.
Mohamed.
What did I say? Mohamed. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not far.
Well, I'm bad on names today. I apologize to everybody.
So I believe here, in the ideal world, I think what Maan said is 100% correct. Regulators should have some sort of a role where we can have some sort of an open access, and this is what's happening in the Western world. If we will move here to our region, and where today things are a bit not like what we wish to be, I believe today the operator should work on the cost-benefit analysis, and he should know what is the need really. So in this case, we are talking about time to market, we are talking about resilience, we are talking about scalability, we are talking about whatever whatever would be the need. And in this case, we would want to be able to reach some sort of a solution where the operator will be able to choose a certain partner who will be able to offer him what he needs. Mm-hmm. And in this case, I mean, I remember an example where we are, as BICS, headquarters are in Brussels, and we were talking about some circuits that are reaching Brussels, and this is the end where they can, what the provider is giving them. However, if they look just next door, you will find someone who can give them access to the rest of the world, but they couldn't see that because they have a certain partnership or a certain relationship with one provider. And here, if I look at the cost-benefit analysis, in this case, I need to choose some sort of a partner who would be able to give me all the reach that I want, all the services that I would expect in order to be able to offer to my customers. And this is how I believe that the operator would be able to reduce somehow indirectly his OpEx. In addition, of course, to the normal exercise that we do in order to buy the best circuits or the best prices.
Right. That's a very good point about having partners and or multiple partners going into various countries.
Yes.
And I'm sure that everybody here looks at that in a big way. You know, maybe to start out on a little different slant, I wonder if each of you would mind giving us an idea of what in your product portfolio you see as expanding or improving upon your carrier capabilities, your interconnect capabilities, things like that. You mind starting with?
No, can you repeat again the question, please?
What in your product portfolio at your particular company helps people to expand upon their capabilities for carrier interconnect, improve upon them, things like that? Or what do you see you would like to, or what do you think you would like to see in the carrier environment?
For me, the most important thing, I believe, the first thing is the reach. Mm-hmm. The reach, time to market. I think monitoring or the quality of service.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, quality of service, then I believe the price. In addition to, of course, the other domains that my organization is handling in the world. But here, this is the most important thing. This is, I believe, what we can find ourselves as unique in this.
Right.
So the most important thing is the reach. This is number one, because this will help us today to help so many organizations to deliver certain services, especially with the tsunami wave of applications and requirements on the customer side.
Sure, sure.
Okay, then it will come, of course, the time to market, the cost, the quality of service, all the other aspects.
Okay, okay, good. Ali?
So I think almost the same points. If the question is that how we could do that. I mean, we talked a lot on that line.
Right.
But if you're talking about portfolio of services, you said portfolio
of products and services at your individual companies.
So
at your individual companies that you see might enhance your capabilities on your carrier and service deliveries.
Is it
anything that
to
may
help
be new?
To help my what services that I do have on top of the normal other services?
Yes,
for example?
yes. Anything that or it may be on the horizon for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, that differs from carrier to carrier. We as Etisalat, of course, I think in terms of services, we have a good portfolio of services in terms of that we are not only voice and data, we are also signaling, we are GRX, we are all the services that you can think of. And I'm sure most of you have heard of our Smart Hub services and all intercarrier related and CDNs and all making that life easy for all, whether it is content delivery networks or carriers or whoever to be under one roof and having easy interconnection and together with internet exchange.
Good.
All that, I think, the whole purpose of that Smart Hub is actually to make that connectivity easier and easier by having all these carriers there, all the CDNs there, so that we can this. I think to a good extent, the initial idea behind that has been the same also, to making this interconnectivity much easier.
Good, good. Maan?
Well, in fact, as you know, I'm here in my quality of CEO of MENA Cable, submarine cable systems. So MENA Cable is launched now. So we don't have previous experience in this regard, but for the product and services, I don't want to anticipate on my presentation and just after this panel or after the keynote following the panel. But to answer the other part of the question, what are I mean, how can we optimize the customer experience?
Right.
I would say today, in the current context of MPLS, I would say the problem or the issue is not on the operational side, or not much on the operational side, because the model is quite relatively simple, and the different OSSs that are operating the networks are in a certain way, to a certain extent, aligned, and they can understand each other because the products are defined, the capacities are defined, and the flow of traffic is not is not really impacted by the interfaces. The burden would be more on the, again, and excuse me for repeating myself, on the commercial side.
Right.
Time to market in terms of finalizing a deal because of the different components that are not always defined before. And again, here would like also perhaps to hear the comments of my colleagues on the panel on the open access model, that would it be beneficial to our region to have this model, even if we go out of the context of the panel, but I think also it's an occasion for all of us to exchange our views on important issues. Would it be a good thing for our region to have this model implemented, or it's better to keep the current model where we have, let's say, protected castles and we limit the number of entrants based on different criteria?
Okay. Amr, how about at GBI?
Well, about GBI, before I say the different products we offer, I need to say that GBI is a 24-month, 2 years operational new network.
Right.
And in the basic DNA of GBI is change. It's a new network, young network, young team that is committed to change. So we believe in few points before we created the products. One size does not fit all. That's the first thing we've learned. One size does not fit all. The second point, it's not the big who eats the small, it's the fast who eats the slow. All right. So many big companies could not survive. So many dinosaurs could not manage to survive because they have not managed to change fast enough.
Sure.
We came and introduced more disruptive products. We thought of delivering a service more than surrendering to the panic of returning the investment fast. We believed in infrastructure sharing. I think between GBI and MENA, that's one of the biggest examples of infrastructure sharing. We looked at the revenue share model. So we offer to the contents aggregator revenue share models, which means for an IP provider who has good contents who want to deliver to the region, we offer them open access to our network. We offer them a revenue share based, no commitment, just come and sell. So we became an enabler to the contents providers, better than fighting them and putting high prices and losing the market.
Good.
We offered floating capacity, which is a new term and a new disruptive term. We have a network that grew from 15,000 kilometers to 40,000 kilometers. So we keep adding to the assets, offering our users, our customers, the ability to transfer their capacity between one point to the other. So basically, we're offering them a better protected way to protect their investment. So you bought capacity from A end to B end. No, we're making it from maybe A end to C end, A end to D end. Those are the different products we're offering. We're close to our partners as carriers. We're humble in the way we do the business. And every day we think what is different that we can do to make sure that we can actually protect the investment.
Sure. Amr, you said something interesting about you're doing the revenue share with some of these folks. Can you tell us just a little bit more? And I asked that because that was a hot topic earlier this morning.
Yes. So basically, there are few drivers that makes operators fight and compete instead of cooperating.
Right.
First thing is we fight about the logo. So we want to see, everybody wants to see the logo of the customer on their presentation. Right. We fight because we are worried about our investment, so each one wants to put the investment. We fight because each one thinks that the other made a 200% margin and I'm ending up with 10% margin. So we ended up in a lot of our business models, like the business model in specific countries, revenue share. Right. How much is a service from A end to B end? It is $1,000. How much of that service goes to this part of the network? 30%. How much goes to that part of the network? 30%. Let's all, I have five salespeople, and maybe my partner has another 5 salespeople. If we agree on a standard price and a revenue share model, then we ended up with 10 salespeople selling the same service instead of 5 salespeople selling the same service and competing together. So we ended up with a transparent model where we share the sales price to the partner, and we all work together. We split the revenue together, and we have one front that is much, much better and more agile to compete in the market. So instead of competing, we're actually cooperating in an open and transparent way.
Good, good. But that sounds great. Now, I know that's a hot topic this morning. That's why I wanted to hear a little bit more there. Yeah, one of the things that comes up a lot in the carrier-to-carrier business is off-net circuits. And when you're doing end-to-end, you got customers, you're provisioning those things for your customers, you want to make sure you take care of it. How can the reliance on off-net circuits stop being a burden on your operations? I just, maybe if we start down at the other end there, if you don't mind, and give us some ideas on that.
We cannot, we will continue depending on off-net circuits. So in order to stop the burden, I think it's a big challenge. I think we can mitigate that. And I think carriers, the wholesale carriers need to work on their toolbox in order to be able now to share what they see with their customers. Because today, depending on so many of circuits and providing it to one customer, if I have an issue, it's very hard to communicate this to my customers. So what we did in BICS is that we started to work on sharing our monitoring tools with our customers. So whatever alarm I see, I can share this with my customers so he can at least be aware at the same time with me, what do I face. On the other hand, dealing with the provider of the off-net circuit as well is becoming an issue for me as a carrier being a customer for a provider.
Right.
Why? I remember we had an issue where we saw some packet loss on one of our circuits, and it took us almost 6 months because the provider cannot see that, cannot see this loss. However, we see it, our customer is complaining, and we discovered that just the circuit was passing by a power plant. So it was causing this issue. It took us 6 months in order to troubleshoot on our side, on our customer side. Until we discovered that it is on the provider side who couldn't see it. And here, if today I can share those info, the troubleshooting and the monitoring mainly, I will save a lot of time and I will help my customer to be more satisfied. And this is the dilemma because as well on our side, this needs a lot of investment from my side. It needs as well, I need to decide what can I share and what I cannot share. So, and I maintain at the same time my customer very satisfied. So for me, the burden cannot be stopped. It will be always there, but I can always try to minimize it to the max.
Sure, sure. Good point. Ali?
Yeah, I think off-net and wholesale service and carrier-to-carrier service, something that you cannot avoid, I think, right. And all services maybe. But I believe it's all what's your objective. If the objective is that you're really caring for quality of service, you are caring for your name as well, so it has to be a managed, controlled off-net links or whatever that you do to select.
Sure.
It should not be done blindly and out of greed or whatever. But unfortunately, a lot of people do, and then they correct themselves, which is something I think, in my opinion, has to be avoided.
Right.
So I think that at the end, the answer in brief is that controlled and managed with quite sort of feeling. It's like having your passion towards your customer and towards your the carrier that you're there. Then overall, I think it should work well.
Right. Good. Good. Maan, what do you think?
Well, again, as I said before, I think for the current situation of the off-net circuits with the MPLS, there are certain challenges on the operational side, but not, I would say, not critical ones, because they could be solved through a deep knowledge of the between supplier and customer. And most of the players, as carriers, are on both seats. Right. So they are both sellers and buyers. I think, as I said, and without repeating myself, that the challenge is elsewhere, I think. Now, when it comes to the future that is almost here now in the coming months and years, where we move to Ethernet carrier, then the game is different, I think, and the complexity of the intercarrier or off-net circuits would be much more impacting the service delivery and the service provisioning and monitoring and fault management and so on. And here, I think the best solution would be to start, as of today, to prepare ourselves in order to, and to adapt our processes and sources of information with the main partners, tell them customers or suppliers, but partners, because we could have both relations between two entities. They could sell and buy from each other at both ends. And to mainly get the information ahead of time when they migrate to Ethernet carrier, not after migration, but to prepare it ahead of time, and to see what circuits are migrated, what is the migration plan, and what tools are used at the other side, how those tools can inform the other side on the status, on the inventory, on the SLA management, and on all, I would say, OSS components at both ends. Again, I think there is no miracle solution. It will be a learning curve that will start with difficulties. I think, I don't want to be pessimistic, but it's better to know it now than to discover it later. I think it will be a painful period, especially in the beginning, and then the learning curve will grow. And in the same time, I hope a certain progress on the standardization will happen on main aspects, mainly on aspects related that impact billing, because here it's really an issue, even though, because how you account for the packets in the internet is different from, so everything that will be affecting billing. I think standardization here is more than crucial, because if you have discrepancies in the billing, sometimes it could lead to the end of the relationship. To
the bottom line, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the challenges are quite important. More we address them early, more we can reduce their impact.
Right. Good. Amr, how about at GBI?
I believe my on-net is somebody else's off-net. Okay. So it's the same problem. It depends on which angle you look at it from. Sure. But if we want to look at the real challenge on the off-net, then we need to understand what kind of off-net are we discussing. Is it the international off-net, or is it the domestic off-net? Right. If it's an international segment or a wholesale segment, we never see this issue with any of our partners we work with. Circuits could be activated in 2, 3, 4 days, 5 days. We all, as Mr. Ali said, we all pick up the phone, talk to each other. We could do it. It's international, like Smart Hub. It's very easy. Good. The challenge happens, but that's what I'm trying to say is we need to look at where is the real challenge. The real challenge is in the domestic networks everywhere in the world. The Middle East is quite famous for it because it's a new infrastructure. I'll give you some thoughts about it. If you look at 50% of the domestic off-net circuits that we or anybody else wants to deliver is already in place, already implemented. Mm-hmm. Why would it take 1 month and a half? Right. If we really think about it, it's process, it's people. Because in reality, there was this nice, clever service engineer who will ultimately, once he gets the fully signed paper, will sit on the system, will do like this, and the circuit is up. That is going to take maybe 5 hours, 6 hours. In reality, it's the process that took 1 month and a half. The contracting, the master service agreements, the mismatches of SLAs, you have paid before, you haven't paid before, I don't know you, you know you. All this actually is not related to the circuit itself. It's
you're
us.
right. Yeah.
So I believe it is, how are we going to do the business? Is it going to be a machine to machine from now on? So circuits are pre-connected and then we work? We don't know.
Good, yeah. Good. I think we're probably getting very similar answers from everybody along that regard. I want to close out with a question. This is kind of a future-looking question for all of you. You hear all the big buzzwords in the industry today about SDN and network function virtualization, things like that. How is that impacting your carrier-to-carrier business? Is it impacting it at all right now? And do you see it helping or improving things in the future? How about maybe start at the other end down there? What do you think?
So about the future, of course, we are talking about now apps will be able to define how the network will behave. So
Right.
if you were talking about, for example, with the SDN, and we will be able, for example, if Google wants to move some terabytes from one data center to data center, they can communicate directly to the network and ask, do you have some capacity for those terabytes, or can I have it later on? So this is, of course, the future. Today, with this, like, for example, the SDN, it's a very broad concept, and what we are doing now is just provisioning services. Maybe if we start by automating the processes, we will be able to deliver what the customer expects from us. Okay, but of course, maybe I don't have the level of experience like my other colleagues about what will happen in the future, but this is how I see it from a very narrow perspective.
Okay, thank you, Mohamed. Ali?
Yeah, I think it's all about virtualization and more into the software. So if you're talking about SDN or NFV, so making the interconnection of these change services much faster. Right. But definitely this is a future thing, and today maybe with all the data centers, this is sort of thing which is exactly filled with big data or whatever, but it's not something that day-to-day wholesale carriers are actually felt. But this is also more and more as you are cloud enabling and all these services which comes. So I think the name of the game here is that to make all these interconnectivity for those change services much faster.
Good, okay. Maan?
Well, first of all, I would disagree with Mohamed when he said that he has less experience than the colleagues on the panel. I think,
thank you very much.
Especially on the SDN and NFV side, I think I wouldn't be mistaken to say that nobody has experience, because at this point of time, still projects that are, or concepts that are being developed and tested at the conceptual level more than implemented physically and tested operationally. So here I think we are all in the same,
I'm very
same level of experience.
I'm very glad. I should be proud of myself.
And now, according to the literature, because since we have no experience, the only thing that we can rely on is what is written in the different reports, is that we should not overestimate the impact of SDN and NFV on the, let's say, smoothness of the service when they will be here. Definitely it will help, but it will be only a small part or a part, we don't know yet what size it will take, on the, what they call the orchestration approach. Right. And it will be a part that will intervene at the end of the process more than at the beginning, where you have the inventory or where you have your in-house, let's say, tools. I think, at least on my side, saying more about this topic would be, I mean, claiming knowledge that I think is still not available today based on experience.
Understand. Amir?
I would tend with my colleagues. I believe we hear all those big buzzwords, and the best word I heard a few days ago when I was talking to a consultant about cloud services. We're trying to get more knowledge. And he said, you've got more than 50 definitions of cloud. So the cloud itself looks cloudy. So all those services will, the sure thing, it will change the way we do business.
Right.
How is it going to change it? We're not sure yet. We're not sure yet how is it going to change the way. But most importantly, every single part of this technology is, again, abstracting the layer of cables. This layer is being abstracted, and we're becoming, to a lot of people, I find it very difficult to explain to my children which company I work for, what do I really do. It's very difficult, but my biggest worry is that they don't know what a videotape is. And videotape was there 10 years ago. So I'm worried after 10 years I won't be able to tell them how I was making the money, actually, to bring it back home. So all those will change. Will change. We just need to be part of the change.
Right. Good. Well, I want to thank all of you for being on the panel today. One of the things that I think we've heard a lot of is that we need some sort of standardization on carrier-to-carrier interconnection, automation more of what happens in this business out there. And we all need to look to the future about this ever-changing and ever-transformative industry out there. But thank you all so much. We got our gentleman from BIG, we got our gentleman from Etisalat, we got the MENA cable, we got the GBI cable. I think we had a good rounded group here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.